is one of the biggest scandals of the previous administration. Democrats accused of weaponizing the IRS against conservatives.
They were totally improper. Criteria were used to select organizations applying for C4 designation for further review. Those organizations predominantly were conservative organizations.
Yeah, oops. Now, years later, Democrats demanding President Trump release his tax returns. So, is the IRS being politicized and weaponized again? Here to debate it is Mark Meckler, co-founder of the Tea Party, Patriots, and was targeted by the IRS himself. And Democratic strategist is with us, Kevin Chavis. Kevin, is that what the party's doing again, this time on the president?
No, and I believe that there is clearly a legitimate purpose for requesting these returns, because there are several proposals in front of the Ways and Means committees, other committees, that would change the way that the IRS or the Congress looks at loopholes or the way taxpayers are getting around certain provisions. So it's nothing for the Ways and Means Committee to request to get these returns. Right. It will happen. The question is whether it should be made public, and that's another debate. Well, there definitely needs to be a legitimate purpose for that, which I think there will be, but they will get the returns. I don't think there's any question about that.
Well, that Mick Mulvaney begs to differ. He says they'll never get it. So Kevin says they just want to find out more about the tax system by getting the president's taxes. Mark, does that sound good to you?
No, it sounds outrageous. Look, this is exactly what the IRS did to the Tea Parties. They targeted people based on their political affiliation.
And it
exactly
worked.
What's going. Yeah, it absolutely worked in 2012. And by the way, the IRS had to pay a settlement in a litigation brought by our organization of over $3.5 million. This is what Democrats are doing again. There's no legitimate purpose for this. If what Kevin said was true, they would be seeking a broad swath of taxpayer records. They're just targeting the president, and there is no law that requires the president to turn over his tax returns, so Democrats have found another way.
Well, but there's a provision, Kevin, that lets the chairman of Ways and Means request the president's taxes, correct?
Right, exactly. That provision, we have to realize why that provision was created, because we had a situation back in the 1920s that had a lot of parallels with this situation, whether it's the Teapot Dome scandal, which really was the impetus for creating this provision, but also the fact that we had a Treasury Secretary, Andrew Mellon, who had conflicts of interest. He still retained business interests while serving in the government role, which is very similar to what President Trump has done with his Trump Hotel, his different golf clubs. So there is a reason for us to be skeptical about his holdings and think maybe there is a conflict of interest, and that's why it is legitimate for us to look at his taxes, because that would reveal where those conflicts are.
And the president hears that, Mark, and says this is presidential harassment.
Well, it is, and you notice Kevin just switched. His story originally was because they were considering changing IRS regulations, changing the way they do things. Now it's about the president's conflict of interest. This is just an excuse. And, Brian, we have to remember, they can get your tax returns, my tax returns of conservative organizations under this provision. If they want the president's tax returns, what they had to do is change the law and require presidents or presidential candidates to turn over their tax returns, not use this arcane thing passed in 1924.
Kevin, the other thing is that Ways and Means chairman, if they were to get the taxes, has to keep it secret. Can you blame the administration or the president if they doubt that that would ever be kept confidential?
No, I can't blame them for thinking it would be released. It would probably be quite easy for them to release them, because they could cite the different proposals and saying, hey, we want to close some of these loopholes. Let's look at the tax returns of President Trump, who's been one of the best at exploiting loopholes. He's said it himself that he takes pride in that. So I think it would get released. There are also other cases that are being adjudicated in the Southern District of New York where A.G. James said she was going to go after these documents as well. So I think at some point, it may not be soon, but we will see the returns. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, they might run out of time because they're taking it to litigation. The lawyers are pushing back, so it might be well into 2020 when this thing is even up in front. Kevin Chavis, thanks so much. Mark Meckler, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.